Hi everyone and welcome to a brand new concept of your favorite study association, Offscreen. Yeah, and because of these weird and strange times in quarantine, we wanted to be there for you. Of course, for you. And due to the fact that some events of Offscreen are postponed or even cancelled, we had to think in alternatives. And well, since we have to stay at home and hashtag stay safe, we still wanted to offer something for the people who are now or in the future going to be working on their thesis. So that's why we decided to begin with thesis talks. And also because everyone has to write a thesis sometime. We are there for you. Our first talk will be with, I can say one of the most popular professors of media studies. It's the one and only Mark Deuze. Hi Mark.
Hi, how you doing?
Hi, yeah, I'm doing fine actually. First of all, we know you're always everywhere, of course, and doing stuff to proclaim your ideas to on media actually. How are you doing? Are you doing well? Are you surviving these weird days?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a problem that pales in comparison with people in hospitals and all that kind of stuff. But I am missing traveling. You're very right. The nice thing about all of this, if you can say so, is that among academics worldwide, there's a Google Doc circulating where you can offer your services as a guest lecturer or somebody who helps or supports colleagues who are now teaching online. And so that has been a lot of fun. So I've been giving talks and teaching and discussing with students in Brazil, in Russia, in Australia. And so that's been a lot of fun because at the moment I'm not teaching in Amsterdam, so I miss the students and you're right, I miss being everywhere and talking about media, but media help.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I heard you live in England right now.
Yeah, I split my time between an apartment in Amsterdam and the home life here in England, and where we live on the beach in the northeast of England, far away from everything else. With a whole bunch of dogs, so it's quite lovely here actually. Yeah.
Okay, well, good that you're here and you want to talk about the one and only the big thesis. We're doing this interview because of the students and the future students, of course, who will be writing their thesis. And let's first get back to that time for you. What was your experience with writing your thesis, and do you still know your topic actually?
Yes, I'll never forget it. So I was an international student. I was doing an MPhil, which is like a combination of two MA degrees in South Africa.
Okay.
In Johannesburg, and so I was all alone in a massive city. This was 1995. Nelson Mandela just became president. Country was going nuts.
Yeah.
I was the only international student on the entire campus, which is a campus of 30,000 students. So it was, and I had an office because they didn't know what to do with me, and I had to, do everything on my own. So I mean, it's not the same as a lot of international students now in Amsterdam, but the sense of sort of you're on your own and you're working in isolation is quite palpable, even though it's also exciting. And I wrote my thesis where I compared the roles of journalism in the last local elections in South Africa before the end of apartheid, which were in 1988, and the elections after the end of apartheid, which were in 1995. And I wanted to know how journalists dealt with this completely new environment, because it was still the same journalists, both for the black newspapers and the white newspapers. Were the same people. It's just that the country had completely changed. So it was really an amazing time, an amazing. I had a lot of fun, but it took me forever.
I can imagine. What were your struggles back then? Do you still remember that?
Well, the thing is, if you do this in a bubble, all alone, and you don't interact, like let's say nowadays, a lot of time you're working on a thesis where you're part of a group, where other people working on a similar topic, or you're part of a larger research project. But if you're doing everything on your own, alone, the tendency to drown in your material, in your literature, in yourself is huge. anything you can do to prevent that from happening, to prevent from being completely alone and on your own doing this, I think is crucial. That was a real challenge at the time. I had to figure everything out on my own, and while at the same time adapting to a new country and also wanting to have, fun and explore, and so that was that was the most important thing. Looking back, I would say don't do this alone.
Have you actually ever read your thesis back or not?
Yeah, I still have it in print somewhere. It was massive. There were no word count rules back in the day. I think mine was like 300 pages or something like that. So, because I actually had a lot of fun doing this research. It was MPhil in history, so it was a lot of I've read it, and I think it's very funny because look, I was always a journalist. As well as studying. I came to the academe very late in life, so I had no problem with writing, but I couldn't write as an academic. I wrote stories that, in a language that was accessible and had jokes in it, and so a lot of times my professors were sort of like, oh no. They would always tell me, like, yeah, I really enjoyed what you've written, but I have to give you a low grade because it's not according to standards. Yeah. Not that what I wrote was not true or not right. It was just way too relaxed.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? I ended up not with a high grade, but I'll take it because it was still my language and my work. And I didn't get a low grade because I fucked up the method section or something like that.
No, okay. As a teacher, what do you say first to students who are maybe even scared of this big thing?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing is this is supposed to be about you and you having fun, doing something with the stuff you've learned. And I mean, generally speaking, people like in our field, in media studies, people who study anything related to the media tend to do that because they have some very personal connection to something in the media, which could be, they're a fan of a certain genre of movies, or they love a specific game, or they cannot do without their smartphone, or they're something that they're really worried about the impact of fake news on the people around them. It could be anything. And it's key for your thesis to connect to that love, and to do research about that. Because if it's something you don't really care about, it doesn't make you get excited. If you don't want to talk about it to your partner or in a bar to your friends, then you're going to suffer, right? So that's the number one thing. I try to talk with students I supervise about what they love, what they're passionate about, and then we make a research question based off that. And it could still be about a topic that I give them, but then within that topic, they'll study what they care about. So that's the number one thing. That prevents the thesis to become this alien, weird thing from the outside that you now have to climb. No, it's this thing that's already inside of you. The only thing you have to do is to get it out and give it some structure. So that's one key, like, starting move I always do. And in the process, I always keep coming back to that. It's like the question I most often ask when I review students' work who are working on a thesis is, why should I know about this? Why should I care about this? So fucking what? And it's not because I don't care. Obviously I do. But I want to trigger in them this constant questioning of themselves, like, why am I reading these 50 books and writing in detail what all these authors have said? Do I actually really care? Doesn't somebody who reads my work and wants to know why I care about this so much, do they have to know this stuff? 9 out of 10 times the answer is no. There's a nugget there that they need to know, and the rest is, yeah, well, if you want to know more, read the flippant book. But now we're in my thesis, right? What I find a lot is that thesis students don't realize that they're in control. Like, the literature doesn't control them. They control the literature. The literature is there. I mean, it's like what hip-hop artists would say, the literature is your bitch. And this sounds horrible. And I don't just mean in any kind of gender awful nature, but it's like you tame the literature. The literature should help you, and if it doesn't, it can go and do whatever with somebody else, but you don't want that. So you should also talk about the literature in that way. Well, I've read these 3 books and 12 journal articles about this particular concept. They helped me in articulating this. And where they made it really confusing or problematic was when they started thinking about that. So I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to focus on this. That's an excellent lit review. And the reason why it's excellent is because you took control of it. Right? You weren't sort of, oh my God, as long as if I summarized enough readings. Right? That's making the readings control you. Turn it around. Like, you are in control. You have a research question that your supervisor approved. Now you are the king or the queen. Make it work. Make it work. Make the literature work for you. So that makes it a bit easier as well.
And of course you have the part of choosing a topic and going to write on your thesis. I think that's also a thing right now. The focusing part of it, where you have to put yourself to work, but you're also distracted for everything and everyone around you. How would you deal with that? How do you deal with that?
Well, the thing is with advice about how to get to work and how to write is like advice about how to be creative or do anything really. It differs from one person to the next. You kind of have to know what works for you. For some people, it works when they say from 9:16 a.m. to 12:13 p.m. I write, and then I eat for 37 minutes, and that works for some people. Other people are more like they consider themselves auteurs or artistes, so they sit and wait until the Holy Spirit touches them and then they go right? And I'm not ridiculing that. That's kind of how I work. So I kind of trust the fact that at some point something will snap and then I'll start writing and then 3 months later I stop. But that's me. But generally what does help, especially if you're under deadline and you are already nervous and you are distracted for all kinds of reasons, all of them legitimate, is to cut up all your writing in small pieces and to stop when you finished a piece. So for example, let's say your goal is, you say, well, I have a thesis to write. It will be about 19,000 words. I have 4 weeks to write it. That means I will have to write 700 words a day. I'm just making something up, or 600 or 500, whatever. Okay, write those 500 words and then stop. Right? I mean, unless you are touched by the Holy Spirit, then by all means, keep going. But if you're struggling with writing, don't focus on writing a thesis. Focus on writing the next 500 words, or just finishing this page. I mean, the key to not let the thesis control you is to not think about the thesis, but think about the next little thing that you're about to do. And this is also great advice for dealing with almost anything in life, is that do not look at the end big thing, but just at the next step that you're taking right now. So cut it up in small pieces. If you're climbing a mountain, don't think about the peak that you have to reach. Think about the next bend, the next corner, the next rock that you see in front of you, the path right now, and get there, and then we'll see what comes next. So cut it up in small pieces. Focus on, for example, a daily goal, and it could be something very small. Doesn't matter. And then be happy with that accomplishment and reward yourself with that too.
Yeah, it's your own project. So
that's a really great comment, because a lot of students still think they write their thesis for their supervisor and for a grade. And although you could argue that factually that's true, right? Somebody has to give you a grade at some point, and that grade you get your diploma and you can get the hell out of here. Is that it's not helpful in getting a creative process going. But if you see the thesis as something that gives you the freedom to write about what you care about, that it's something you look forward to doing every day. And in the end, yeah, somebody's going to review it. But look, by the time you finish your thesis, you have had so many different types of review and comments and everything. By that time, it's done. It doesn't really matter that much anymore what the final grade will be. It's like PhD students. By the time they've handed in their dissertation and their supervisor sends it to the rest of the reading committee, that's it. I mean, anything after that, even the defense, is kind of a performance, right? The real work, the real reviews and being judged takes place in the 5 different versions you have to write of chapter 1. But by the time you're almost done, it doesn't really matter that much anymore. So, and funnily enough, that's where most students get stuck. Either they get stuck at the beginning with like formulating a question and getting going, and getting over the hump of the lit review, and almost at the end when they've got 90% done, but then it's like, oh my god, it has to be a complete thesis, and what will they say? It's like, no, you know what they will say because you've already had all these months of feedback and reviews and sessions with your supervisor or with others. I try when I work with my thesis students, I almost never work with them one-on-one, but always in small groups or teams. I try to make this as much about what it is in their project that makes them sort of like excited as possible. Even if it's something really dreary, like a required aspect, like a method section, or the right data in the right table, or how many quotes from their interviews they should transcribe, and all these like nitty-gritty little details, the structure of their reference section. But even then, we can talk about like, why is this so cool? Why is it so great that you can show that you've read all the works of this particular author? Well, because this author is awesome, right? She's this amazing rock star whose work you read and made you look at things completely differently. How cool is it that you can get to cite this work? So to keep talking and thinking about it in those terms tends to help. I'm not naive. Writing a thesis is tough, but it should at the very least also be fun.
Yeah. I just actually just finished my thesis indeed for my bachelor, and I actually also chose for doing it in an audiovisual form. I think it was maybe the first time actually for the bachelor media and culture to do it in an audiovisual form.
Right.
What do you think of that actually? And well, would you recommend it?
Look, when I was doing my thesis, this was in 1995, 1996.
Yeah.
I was at the University of Johannesburg, and at that time in the history department, there was an active debate among the professors what to do with the students who wanted to perform their thesis. So they didn't write it down, they had a dance and a song.
Okay.
And it was about sort of a tribal history of a Zulu village near Durban in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. And so it was a really interesting discussion. And why I'm saying this is that at the time I felt very strongly, and I still feel to this day, that the form in which we put our knowledge doesn't matter. Well, it does matter in a sense that it doesn't have to be written words. If the topic, if what you've learned from it, if your participants necessitate an alternate way of telling that story, then by all means do it. Last year at the IAMCR, the International Association of Mass Communication Research, one of the largest scholarly organizations in our field, I organized a panel with 5 colleagues, all of whom uses what we would call creative ways of doing research and presenting their research. And somebody presented their research as a poem, somebody else as a dance, somebody else as actually they did a reading a non-fiction reading of a book, and the goal of that panel was also to show, how relevant this can be. And what was really interesting is that afterwards, and I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of people approached us, both at the conference and afterwards online, with either stories that they were doing that as well, or how important it is to do things this way sometime. So, long story short, absolutely, we're beginning to experiment with that at the university. And in the MA in journalism in our program, we've introduced 3 years ago a professional kind of MA thesis, where students, instead of a research thesis, can do a multimedia investigative journalism report together with an academic reflection on the theory behind it. But and this works really, really well, and often these things also get published. And I think in the future we'll see more and more of these kind of things. And so you shouldn't do it because you've done the research and what the hell, let's make a documentary out of this.
No.
But it should flow logically from your data, from your method, from what your story is about. And then, yes, absolutely. The only difficulty with this is to get appropriate supervision, because not every academic is trained in guiding a student doing an audiovisual thesis, right? So that requires some extra logistical and organizational effort. But I think that's a really good step, and great that you've done that. Well, I hope it was fun.
It was fun. It was also kind of a lot of workload in the end, because I also had to write 5,000 words, but also made a video of 50 to 30 minutes. So in the end, it was a lot of workload, but I'm still so happy that I did it, because I could use the media. I could use my my research for an argument, and that was amazing to do. And I really saw also some other arguments like coming up while I was editing. So that was really cool to see, actually, and I didn't expect that.
Great. That's great to hear. But I think you're raising two really important points. Is that if you do the format of your research in a different way than usual, that is always extra work. You're quite right. Both do it and to be accountable for it. And secondly, you will get different insights. And this is a great reminder about how relevant the materiality of our media are, right? That the medium, to some extent, is the message. If we put things in a different medium, we will learn new things. And it's a great reminder that if we would argue that the only way to do your thesis is in written word, that also means that we will only produce a certain type of knowledge and not others. Now, how blind can we then be, right? So that's a fabulous insight that you shared there.
I just thought of something, and I don't know how you think about that, but is the thesis actually such a big deal?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the most important thing about a thesis is it the freedom that you get to do something on your own, for yourself, about something that you care about, that isn't prescribed or predetermined by a curricular structure. So, and of course, I mean, there are seminars before that where you can write papers on things that topics that you care about, and you have to some extent some freedom in that. But the thesis is the true playground. So in that sense, it's a big deal. It is not a big deal in the sense that who you are as a student and a person, and how you can take responsibility for everything that you've learned for your degree, whether it's a BA, an MA, or a PhD, isn't and shouldn't be determined by this one thing, this one document. And let me take responsibility for this too. I mean, what we still need to do much better at the university is finding ways to evaluate and grade, if you will, students' work on the basis of process rather than product. Right? We're still quite a product-driven model of assessment with exams and papers and thesis at the end. And we should be doing better in grading sort of the evolution of somebody. And this is an active discussion in the learning community about portfolio grading, right? That all your work throughout your career as a student should go into a portfolio, and the portfolio gets graded, not any single product in it. And that's a lovely idea, but it's very difficult to organize in practice. But I do think I would be an advocate of making that happen. At least within my courses, that's how I grade. So where you get graded on the basis of your progression rather than the final product. Like when I teach the BA course Living Information, and students have to make in teams a video about something about their media environment. Yes, we will look at the video in the end, but their grade is based on the evolution from when they proposed the topic, when they started working on it and gave us feedback, and how they at the end sort of talked about what ended up in the video. Because if we would only grade the videos, then students who've never done a video before would be unfairly disadvantaged. Portfolio grading it would be a solution to the problem that the thesis is this big deal.
Yeah.
But for now, it's still in grading terms is. So it's about working around that.
Is there one last advice or one main tip that you would give everyone who is now watching and maybe is writing their thesis or is going to begin writing their thesis in 2 years or maybe 3 years? But what is the one main thing to remember?
Remember why you started doing this in the first place. So here you are in your 3rd or possibly 4th year as a student in the BA, or in the end of your 1st or 2nd year as an MA, you had a pretty big idea about what you wanted to do before you started your studies. And maybe you got frustrated along the way, maybe you lost touch with that along the way. Well, reconnect to that. And it could be something you started out with, it could be something you've discovered along the way, but take that feeling seriously and reconnect to it, because that's the feeling that's going to sustain you. As you may or may not know, I mean, most of my research is about people working in the media. And from all my years in interviewing media professionals, whether it was the 10 years I spent in the US and in Hollywood or in the Netherlands or in South Africa or in Australia, where I also work, is when I talk to media professionals, they always tell you, like, you have to follow your passion. But what they mean with that is not that well, as long as you love what you do, it doesn't matter what you do. What they mean with that is that you often end up in incredibly precarious, uncertain, anxious, crazy, unpredictable situations where there's a lot of pressure on you and you don't know how you will make it to the next paycheck, and you have to deliver this major thing that you don't even know if you have the right qualifications for it. What keeps people going is that they remind themselves, but I love doing this. It's like the cliche of people who work in the media. They always tell you, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. Right? So try to connect to that feeling and take it seriously. It's like, I mean, what is it that really makes you want to think about and write about media? And that is what you should connect to, because that is what will carry you over the inevitable humps in your thesis process where you're stuck, when you have writer's block, when you have to read this one book that your supervisor told you to read and it makes no sense to you whatsoever, or you can't get people to talk with you, or whatever. And everybody will bump up against these things. Connect back, make sure that you're in touch with that feeling, then you'll be fine.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. And I would love to read your thesis, actually.
I think it's I think it is in Dutch. Yeah. I think I wrote in Dutch at the time. My supervisors were Afrikaans speaking.
Oh yeah.
And because I thought it would be boring, every 4th or 5th page I put a cartoon in it.
Oh my god. Those were the times.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mark, and I'll see you soon.
My pleasure. Take care.